Okay, we're going to do a lesson on types of verb at the start of this course and types of noun, types of adjective. I just want everybody to understand the terminology that I very often use to explain mistakes. We'll look at a few mistakes today because this is a course for non-natives, and I always like non-natives to recognise their own mistakes. Of course, you want to improve your English, right? And so you've got to find your mistakes and get rid of them. And so I will explain some of these typical verb mistakes, and I will need a lot of this terminology that I will use very often in this course. And so let's make sure that we all start the course on the same page. So what about non-finite and finite verbs? You sometimes hear this distinction. And I would say that I consider finite verbs real 100% bona fide verbs. Yeah, they are verbs in the classical sense because they have a doer. They have a subject, and that means they also have a tense. And when I say tense, I mean past, present, future. I don't mean aspect. Aspect is simple, continuous, perfect simple, perfect continuous. And each tense has 4 aspects. But I don't consider tense and aspect the same thing. Classical verbs, yeah, real verbs, finite verbs have they show tense. They're always in past, present, or future. These verbs, non-finite verbs, do not have a subject and they do not have a tense, but they do have an aspect: simple, continuous, perfect simple, perfect continuous. But they don't have a tense. Okay, I want to make that clear. They don't have a tense. They don't show you if they're past, present, or future. And these non-finite verbs, well, you might even consider them not verbs. And that's because non-finite verbs don't have a subject. And that means that, sometimes they're functioning as adjectives, and we call those non-finite verbs participles. Sometimes they're functioning as nouns, and we call those non-finite verbs gerunds. Sometimes they're functioning as, well, sometimes it's a 2 plus infinitive phrase, and a 2 plus infinitive might be functioning as a noun, it might be functioning as an adjective, it might be functioning as an adverb. Yeah, it can do a lot of different things, the 2 plus infinitive phrase. So it's very, very flexible. Okay, and then you also have these bare infinitives, and bare infinitives are just the infinitive without 2, and you normally see bare infinitives after modal verbs, which we're going to do in a second. Yeah, so modal verb plus infinitive. That's a very important rule. You never use a modal verb like must, can, could, should, would, will, may, might. You never see a modal verb without a bare infinitive after it. It's always modal verb and then bare infinitive. Must go, must play, must have, must stay. It's never modal verb and 2 plus infinitive. Yeah, that's a very common mistake, and we'll see it in a moment. Okay, so these non-finite verbs are these guys, and you can see why we call them verbs because, let's take some participles like running, sweating, playing. You can see how somebody might say, well, they're doing words, they're action words, they're a verb. Clearly playing is related to play, running, run, swimming, swim. And I agree, they are. But very often, if you say something like this, running on the spot, comma, Dave became exhausted, or Dave ran out of breath, something like that. The running on the spot, that is an adjectival phrase describing Dave. It's not really a verb. The verb in that sentence, yeah, Dave ran out of breath. The verb is ran out of, and it's in the past tense. We can see the tense. Run, ran, run. Yeah, Dave ran out of breath. And so the verb in that sentence is in the main clause. Dave ran out of breath. Yeah, main clauses must have finite verbs in them. Basically, the definition of a main clause has a finite verb, and it has all the information for a complete thought. Okay, now with some verbs, that's just a subject and a verb, and we call those verbs intransitive verbs. They don't need an object. Okay, intransitive verbs have no object. I sneezed is a main clause. Notice it has a subject and a verb in the past tense. He coughed is a main clause. it has a subject and a verb in the past tense. Yeah, so that's a finite verb. That's a finite verb. But if you say coughing all day, comma, I couldn't. I couldn't get rid of my cold, something like that.